And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin of Lakers Daily. I remembered to do it that time, Brad, if you're watching. I am joined today by Sabreena Merchant of The Athletics. I'm great with it with guests. I'm really good with it with guests. I'm just terrible at talking about myself. Sabreena does the Athletic Women's Basketball Show. She covers women's basketball for The Athletic. The Athletic is also doing some really cool stuff for March Madness. So you're going to want to make sure you check Madness. It almost sounded like I said badness. March Madness is where you want to.
Are you talking about the Lakers record during March?
That's what's crazy. We'll talk about this or whatever, but yeah, you got to check out all the stuff that she is doing there at The Athletic. It is all great work. Her and her colleagues there are absolutely killing it. We are later in the show going to be talking about women's basketball and about Caitlin Clark specifically, because I'd be remiss not to talk to Sabreena and not bring up that aspect of all of this. But yeah, I wanted to start there, Sabreena. The Lakers since February are somehow 10-4, and you would never know it.
Pretty good.
You would
When you say you would never know it, you mean as a consumer of Anthony Irwin's takes about the Lakers, you would never know it.
I was prepping for the show and I was kind of getting ready for last night's show as well. And I looked back on February. I was like, damn, they're playing really good basketball. And February was kind of a tough schedule, not as tough as March is going to be. But it was, we all thought that January was when they would have to they would rack up wins, a lot of home games, all that stuff. And then they would, use that momentum to carry them through February and March. But nope, it's the opposite. And I honestly think that is why we feel the way, or I feel the way I do about this team, and that I have no idea how to feel about this team ever. You have been able, mercifully, to be to take a step back and kind of distance yourself in the way that you can, focusing on women's sports the way that you are, women's basketball the way that you are. When I tell you the Lakers are 10-4, how does that register in your brain since February?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. First of all, because I do consume so much of your work, I thought it was way worse. The general doom and gloom surrounding the Lakers seems to be much worse than that. I've also watched us play the Nuggets multiple times, so it lends a worse light on how the Lakers are doing. But I mean, ever since Rui got into the starting lineup, I feel like the Lakers have been in a pretty good place. There was obviously a couple games where I think LeBron sat out against the Warriors, so that changes things. But since the Lakers went to the starting lineup that played in the Western Conference Finals,
crazy
again, not the lineup that started in the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, I do dearly miss Jared Vanderbilt and Dennis Schroeder for what it's worth. But I just like the way this group looks. I'm enjoying Jackson Hayes at backup center. It's a weird thing that keeps coming up on my Lakers group chat. Big Jackson Hayes fans among the five of us. And yeah, it's just a nice, pleasant time to watch the Lakers again, other than when they're playing the Nuggets.
Yeah, I legitimately can't wrap my head around that 10-4 spot and how I feel about this team. I think a lot of it has to do with losing to bad teams, and
I mean, the way the games have gone too, right? You think about Clippers, Wizards on that back-to-back, very easily could have been 0-2. So you don't come out of that feeling oh, the Lakers just won 2 more games. It's what the F happened against Washington?
Right. They want to build up your expectations because of how they play against better teams, right? They beat the crap out of the Oklahoma City Thunder last night, and they are 3-0 against them this season. That was the best team in the conference going into that game last night. And so you watch them play like that, and you're like, okay, all right. I had viewers and commenters here on YouTube basically saying that game makes me want to feel a certain way about this team. And then, they played the Sacramento Kings, who just lost to the Chicago Bulls last night as well. And I have no idea how that game is going to go. I have no earthly idea. I think that the Lakers should be able to take care of business. I believe they play them at home. Mm-hmm. And so you're thinking all right, this should be an opportunity to go, 4-1 in the last 5 and continue to build some momentum. Absolutely huge game for playoff standings and stuff like that.
Exactly.
And yet I'm not betting on it. Like, I'm not touching it. Like, I have no idea how this is going to go. And I think really, like, when we talk about how people feel about this team, I do. And you mentioned the way that the games go. I think Darvin went to the starting lineup that we have all been begging for him to go to, and that the team themselves have been begging for him to go to. That's the funniest part of this, is like the guys are like, "Hey, Darvin, remember that one time? Like, we had some fun together once upon a time. Can we do that some more?" And then they go to that lineup, and I think they are now, as a group, like 8-1. They are,
I think Raj tweeted that it was 9-2. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're watching, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. You play your best players and you tend to look quite a bit better. And yet, like, right. And yet, we still have him making interesting decisions between Cam and Max. And Spencer, I think, has been better than people thought in certain ways, but worse in the ways that people would have kind of expected him to play. And others. And yeah, you sit on all of that and you arrive at a 10-4 spot since February. And I can't quite get myself to be optimistic, which is probably a good thing, because every time I get optimistic,
doesn't work.
Yeah, like every time I start to feel good about this team, something terrible happens. But I can't quite get myself to really believing in them. How, like, do you believe in these guys moving forward, getting into the play-in, getting the right seed, and getting into the playoffs, and doing whatever they can in the playoff setting?
All right, let's start at the bottom there. I definitely believe the Lakers will get into the play-in. I'm not of the belief that Houston or Utah is going to miraculously catch them. Like, I just don't see that happening. Not based on the way those teams have played and the way the Lakers clearly want to make the play-in. So I'm not concerned about that. I just keep looking at the standings, and like every time I check, it's 7th and 8th are like 3 losses ahead of the Lakers, and it's a big bar to clear with 20 games left. Which is why Wednesday against Sacramento is so very important. And thank goodness they lost to the Bulls last night. But I think if the Lakers were to get in that 7-8 play-in, I would trust them to win a first-round series. Yeah, I think that's where I'm landing. If they are in the 9-10, I don't even trust them to make the playoffs, because you're traveling in between those 2 games. It's 2 games where you literally have to have LeBron be apex predator LeBron, which I think he can do, but like it's also 2 games of relying on Torian to make threes and Rui to look good, which Rui looks cool like every 3 or 4 games, and that's just the way it's been.
It really is completely dependent on if he's scoring. Like if Rui is scoring, he looks incredible. If he is not, he is maddening.
And like, I understand why his role has been yanked around the way it has, because there is a certain level of inconsistency to his play. I'm not necessarily sure I agree with it, but like I understand how, as a coach, you want more out of Rui Hachimura. But whatever, I digress. So confident the Lakers will end up in 9-10. If they end up in 7-8, I'd pick them to win a first round series. I don't think they can beat the Nuggets in the playoffs. And at some point you have to play the Nuggets. So like that's pretty much where the ceiling of the Lakers lies for me.
It's like begging the Wolves to beat them. Like, please.
Could the Kings beat the Nuggets? I don't know. Like, somebody's got to take care of it for us. We just can't do it. It's so weird too, because like in my entire time as a Laker fan, I've never in the years where the Lakers are truly contending, which I think you can quibble with the fact that they're truly contending this year, but they at least entered the season with the expectation of truly contending. There's never been a time where I've looked at another team in the West and been like, yeah, they're just better than us. Like, we can't beat them. And it's so weird.
Yeah. The Nuggets thing is so brutal, because it's the same exact game
every
over
time.
And over and over and over. So we it was Saturday night that the Lakers played the Nuggets, right? So we were
Those Saturday games have been great, by the way. Every Saturday, they're so good.
Yeah, they're like at perfect times too. I'm
Yeah.
biased because I'm Central Time now,
I
but
like the
like
5:30 just fine, honestly. I go out afterwards, like, it's good.
yeah, I'll ask Alexa in my living room what time do the Lakers play or whatever, and she'll say 9:30, and it's not just my soul that she kicks directly in the nuts. It's Jen too. Like she will
Mhm.
hear that and she'll be like, "Oh, do you want to go take a nap? Like, are you okay? Are you gonna be like?" She is starting to legitimately worry about my health at this point because of those 9:30 tip offs. Saturdays are great though, but Saturday we came home and we had taken the kids. There's a little spot down the freeway where they have like a playground and then they have like a bunch of like tables and they have this big stage and it was live music and had a beer or two and Avery was playing on the thing. Miles was loving life, like watching this band. He could watch the drums and he was like sitting there just like hammering the tables. Like, this is what people do. And so we got home and, watched the rest of the game or whatever, started watching the rest of the game. And it got to 5 minutes or so and it was close. And Jen's like, "Hey, look at this. Look at these guys go." And I'm like, "No, like if I could live bet this right now, I would put the house on the Lakers losing this late." And I think Denver essentially goes on like a 10-0 run. They outscore the Lakers by 10 points in those last
Mhm.
5 minutes. And it's just like it's so predictable. And again, I think that kind of gets us to circle back to like that central point of like why with the Lakers sitting 5 games up on 500, that's the most that they have been above 500 all season. They've been at this point a few times, this season, and with them being 10-4 during what was supposed to be their tougher stretch of the season, I think the predictability of the bad stuff and the unpredictability of the good stuff is essentially why you kind of you mesh all of those things together. You swirl it up in a pot and you arrive at how people feel about this team now, where it's like we know when they're going to be bad. We don't necessarily know when they're going to be good. When they're good, it looks great, but we just don't know how often that is going to happen. And that's why I also would like, I know the Lakers' internal kind of focus right now is getting to that 6 seed. Um, and
I mean,
if
why not?
that,
That's the proper
yeah,
goal.
right, yeah. But like to me, I am fighting, scratching, and clawing, and doing whatever I can possibly do to avoid being in that 9 or 10 spot. Like that to
Yeah.
me is the central focus here because having to play 2 win or go home games back to back, and then your reward for it is playing in an
The 1
actual
seed.
playoff
Yeah.
series. Like I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good on that as an option.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the play-in is, like, I know that it's kind of removed the drama from who's going to make the postseason because we know the 10 teams in the West pretty clearly, but there is such a strong line of demarcation between each of those spots. Like, it's so much better to be
Yeah.
9 than 10 because you get the home game. So much better to be 8 because you get 2 chances. So much
Yep.
better to be 7. So much better to be 6. So, like, every single spot really makes you wanna keep clawing, and I think that's gonna be interesting to see just throughout the conference, over the last however many games we have, but it's not that much fun when you're on standings watch in March. Like, it's just really not.
I was told we were not going to have to deal with this
Oh
year.
my god.
I was
I
promised.
I think the first time I remember being, like, on strict standings watch was 2013. The the Kobe, Dwight,
Yeah.
um, Nash, god, I forgot he was even on the team because he was so
Yeah.
useless, but, I think it was this time of year where I was watching every Utah Jazz game, just dying for them to lose because they were ahead of us in the standings, and there was this one game, I forget who they were playing, but Enes Kanter misses.
Mhm. I'm sorry, you broke up there a second. Oh, is it me? Can't be me. Can you hear me?
My internet seems fine. Yeah, I can
There
hear
we
you.
go. Yeah, there you are.
Sorry.
Exit out of some stuff. Live video, everybody. Um, I
Sorry
lost
about
you
that.
at you were watching every Utah Jazz game and there was an Enes Kanter game.
Yeah, yeah. He missed like a 2-foot bunny to win a game. And like, I kid you not, my brother and I celebrated as if like, the Lakers had just won like game 6 of a playoff series.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I've been on standings watch basically all season because I
Mm,
knew how tough this Western Conference was going to be. And it's why I honestly think that's probably like why I have sounded so negative about the Lakers. I always trend negative. That is just kind
sure.
of who I am as a person. But given how tough I knew this conference was going to be, and how tough, like you just put it perfectly, how important it is to be the 7 seed versus the 8, or the 8 versus the 9, or the 9 versus the 10. um, I knew like those stupid games that they lost earlier this season were going to be extra. Like you're going to look back on those games and you say, like, man, why did they do that there to that team? And gosh,
We
like,
lost 10 out of 12 once at like some point in December, which is
yeah.
insane to think about with this level of talent that the Lakers have. To lose 10 out of 12 games, that's stupid.
I also think it wasn't because LeBron or AD were hurt either. Like it just happened. Like that was a thing that happened and we had to live through it. Um, the other thing too with this playoff picture and setting my expectations for the Lakers is it is real, like their success I think is going to be almost completely reliant upon their matchup, right?
Mhm.
I desperately want to play the Thunder in that
Yep.
first round, and I know the Thunder desperately want to avoid the Lakers in that first round. It is a terrible
I
matchup
don't
for
even
them.
know who the Thunder match up well against at this point in the bottom half of the bracket, but they kind of remind
Yeah,
me of like last year's Grizzlies, not in terms of like the vibe around the team at all, but just
yeah,
like
yeah.
they've won a lot of regular season games, but I'm not sure they're actually as good as, their record would suggest.
Yeah, I think with the Lakers in particular, in any team that can turn them into a jump shooting team, right? Like,
Mhm.
uh, I think last night, I think I should have pulled up the stat, but Jason Timpf grabbed the stat and was tweeting it out earlier today that like basically the Thunder shot twice as many jump shots last night as the Lakers did. And if you could turn the Thunder into a jump shooting team, I know Kason Wallace can hit. I know J-Dub can hit. I know Shea can be kind of a streaky shooter as well, but Giddy can't shoot for anything. Chet, if you're turning Chet into a 3-point shooter, you're doing your job.
Mhm.
And you have Isaiah Joe, but he doesn't play a ton, so he might knock down a couple of shots. Lou Dort had it going last night, but you kind of live with Lou Dort shooting from the outside. If you can, if you can build that wall and turn the Thunder into a jump shooting team, as the Lakers have every time they've played them this year, they are a completely different team. And I don't think, I think, frankly, every other team that the Thunder are going to play this year are capable of doing that, except for like maybe Phoenix,
Yeah.
maybe Sacramento, and that's it, really, right? Like
Yeah, I agree.
maybe
Like even the
Dallas.
Warriors are kind of small. I would bet
Yeah.
on Steph and Draymond to figure out a team as young as the Thunder every time.
Yeah. Well, also like, Draymond knows what homework to do there, right?
Mhm.
The assignment, right, was the word I was looking for. Like Wiggins, Kaminga, Moody, Pods, Draymond, you have enough defensive wherewithal there to turn OKC into a jump shooting team. I would fade the Thunder in the playoffs, almost no matter who they play, but especially against the Lakers. So like if I were the
Mhm.
Lakers, I would do whatever I can at the bottom of the conference to align myself with OKC. Now,
So, like,
fortunately,
if
yeah,
OKC gets the 1 seed and you're in the 7-8 play-in, do you deliberately lose that game to get OKC?
no, I don't know if I would go that far. I mean,
If
it
it's
would
like a
cross
choice
my
between
mind.
OKC at the 1 seed, who's at the 2 seed? It'd have to be
Yeah.
like a pretty big, difference, I suppose.
Patty Mills to the Heat per Woj. I'm not sure why,
Cool.
but um, so yeah, they go from one Krabby Patty and Kyle Lowry to Patty Mills. Like it's just great, fantastic. But yeah, I think for the Lakers though, I want to play the Thunder, and from there in the second round, I think everybody is about even, so long as you can avoid Denver, right?
Mhm.
I like I don't don't love their chances against the Clippers. Don't love their chances against
The Suns.
I guess the Suns. I actually really like their chances against the Suns. Although
they looked terrible in that game last week. Book just has a way against the Lakers too.
Yeah.
I'd much rather play the Suns than the Nuggets, obviously, but between the Suns and the Clippers, I think I'd rather play the Suns.
Yeah, I think so. I don't like. I'm
Mostly
more
'cause
worried about Kawhi in a series, but
do I
he always
trust
breaks
Ty
down
more
now.
than Frank Vogel? It's a weird way of thinking about it.
But like I think the kind of central point that I guess I'm trying to make here in a really poor way is we're starting to see a path that the Lakers can potentially follow here, right? That can at least get you to the Western Conference Finals, where you will probably lose to the Denver Nuggets, but you can at least get there. My question to you is again, like, how much faith do you have in their ability to A, notice that path, and B, actually execute it?
Well, I mean, I don't think Darvin is changing the starting lineup again, right? I don't want to assume anything, but
He's just waiting for Cam to get healthy.
I think this group has proven enough. The thing with Cam, he's just huge. He's like 6'9", maybe 6'10", and like you look at him on the court, he just takes up so much space. Like the arms, I understand, why he's playing over Max. I didn't understand why he was playing over D'Lo the other night, but like I get Cam off the bench. Like that's something that makes sense to me. I understand why he's in the rotation, but it's not what I meant to talk about. I don't trust.
Can't get there with you, Sabreena. I can't. Like, I get it if the only thing you're working off of is seeing everybody walk into the gym.
I think he's a good defender.
And you don't
like
watch
I thought he looked good
yesterday.
Basketball.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish earlier this season, completely agree that I thought he was really impacting ball handlers, and I thought he was really nagging people.
Thought he looked great against the Suns in a couple of those matchups.
Earlier this year.
Yeah.
Since he's come back, though, I don't feel like he's impacting anything defensively. Like Jamal Murray looked like he was, E. Jiangliang, like dribbling around chairs when Cam was on him, and even last night, like he just like there was somebody who noticed he was kind of limping when he walked off the court. I didn't hear anything post game about any of that, but I
mean, you got to work him back into shape at some point, right?
Do you?
I think so. I don't think you're expecting Vanderbilt to come back. I think you need Reddish.
Yeah, I'd rather rely on Max. I just don't. I don't like how little you get from Cam offensively, And I think with Max, he's at least like he's almost like I think he's 46 or 48% from the corner on catch and shoot threes.
He's not guarded like that though.
What's that?
He's not guarded like that.
But that's fine though. Like that means that he's going to have a couple more open ones. Cam's
going to cramp the space at least in the middle,
Yeah, but like when the ball rotates over to Max, I think there's a chance the ball's going in the basket. When the ball rotates over to Cam, I'm like, okay. That's to me the issue that I'm running into. But yeah, I think even given like you're talking about their 7th or 8th guys essentially, so that I guess isn't as big an issue. But the path though through the playoffs and their capability of executing it, I wish we had seen more consistent play from them, because that's what I keep on bumping my head up against is on any given night. LeBron has voiced this opinion specifically. We can do great things against anybody. We can also get our asses kicked by anybody. And you don't want to say that about a playoff team.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change over the next, 6 weeks before the start of the playoffs. I think that's kind of the boat the Lakers are stuck in, and you just have to hope that they're in one of their upswings. Like they're not in that December lull, that they're more like this team or this team that we saw in November. They're just not good enough to have that kind of confidence in them. You just have to hope that they happen to be in a good rhythm. Like I wish I had more confidence in them too, but they've shown enough that they're not like a very good team. They're an essentially average team that has good nights and bad nights, and just got to string together some good nights.
Is there anything short of results that you could see from them from now to the playoffs where you could develop that confidence?
I mean, they kind of are who they are, right? Like, they're not gonna become a dramatically better shooting team, like, D'Lo is obviously just lighting the Nets on fire right now, which how funny was it, by the way, when he just, like, fell on the floor and sort of dared OKC to call timeout at the, like, risk of him being trampled if they just kept playing the game. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if, like, Austin and D'Lo are not gonna become, like, a shutdown backcourt, right? Like, that's just not a thing that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I think, you can lean into things that work better, right? Like, you can use AD more in the pick and roll when he's being, stifled in the post. You can be more adaptive on defense instead of allowing the same thing to beat you over and over again. Uh, like, there are minor things I think that the Lakers can do to make themselves like slightly higher ceiling on a night to night basis, but at a certain point, it's just like this is the team that they are. I thought the ceiling was higher coming into the season. I'm not so sure it is anymore. But like it's pretty good. I think they're still a second best team in the Western Conference. So if that top team gets knocked out, then like there you are. You're onto something.
It's like that analysis reminds me of this comment that we got from Zane while we've been talking. The Lakers just need to focus on building a 50-point lead before the fourth quarter versus the Nuggets so that they don't somehow blow the game in the clutch. They still might.
It's
Is
just
the
so
thing.
annoying because the Lakers formula is they're bigger and they're more physical and they're like stronger than everybody else. And then the Nuggets went and got Aaron Gordon and they were like, try to match that, So now they're bigger than us and they're more physical and there's just, there goes the plan.
It's not just that they are like they're bigger and more physical positions that the Lakers cannot beef up at, right?
But
Like you can.
how many power forwards in the league can literally match LeBron James in physicality? Like Aaron Gordon is like one of the few on the list, right?
Yeah.
Like that's incredible. And then like Michael Porter Jr., like I think Rui's a pretty big guy when you're playing him at the three. He still can't contest a Michael Porter jump shot. Like, that's just
No.
it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah, they're bigger everywhere, except with LeBron. LeBron is the only person at his position that is bigger than the guy that he's going up against, and it's not by enough.
It's not by enough. Yeah.
and Jamal Murray, I think, is more physical than I think D'Lo is bigger than Murray, but Murray I think is more physically imposing than D'Lo, and KCP and Austin. KCP is clearly bigger and more athletic than Austin. It's a brutal matchup that the Lakers have there, and like I had somebody say to me today in my mentions, because I tweeted that I would like to see the Lakers, like this is the path, right? Get to whatever seed matches up with OKC, hope that Denver is on the other side of the bracket, and then try to win as much a game this time, and say you improved on last season. And somebody was like, no, that's not the mentality. You got to face Denver in the first round. I'm like, okay, so you're going home in the first round.
Yeah, I don't
Cool.
want
Like that's that's great. You sound super tough on Twitter, but that is not turning out well. Brandon Omeng left us a super comment, which means we get to play this bad boy. He writes, Max needs Cam's minutes, especially because Cam doesn't look healthy. Getting him 12 to 15 minutes would be nice. Can you give a couple threes, or can give you a couple threes, solid defense, good rebounding? First position, I think Cam is actually Max is somehow better a rebounder than Cam. I just think he has better overall kind of instincts and fundamentals there. I think the point about Cam's health is important because, I think part of it is like the way that he walks. Like Kevin Durant used to say he used to walk like this in school, where he was growing up and he was taller than everybody, and he would literally like kind of slunk his head down so that he wasn't so much taller than everybody. I think Cam has some of that to him too, where he just kind of like slumps over a little bit, and you watch him move when he's walking off of the court, and you watch him move between plays, and he just doesn't look very healthy. And then you see guys dribble by him, and it makes you kind of wonder if he's healthy. He's missed so much time this season with nagging injuries, whether it's a hamstring thing or an ankle thing or whatever. And like I understand that you're trying to get the guy back healthy, but I don't know if there's anything you can do for a guy who has missed as much time with those kinds of injuries as Cam has. The same can be said, by the way, about Gabe, and will be said about Vanderbilt. We're supposed to get an update on Vando and Gabe next week. Vanderbilt wasn't wearing his brace last night, and you're hoping, all right, that's progress. Maybe, and I know that there was a clip of him riding a bike the other day, and you're hoping that that's enough progress or whatever. But at this point in the season, he has missed so much time between the first stint that he missed with the heel bursitis at the beginning of the year, and now the second stint that he's missed. I don't know if there's a way to get him up to speed. I don't know if there's a way to get Cam up to speed. I know there's a way that Max can be up to speed right now. And I think that's more of the wager, the gamble that I would make. This is a good question though, too, also from Brandon, which means I get to play this bad boy again. He writes, come to playoffs, would you rather go with Wood or Hayes, Spencer Dinwiddie or Gabe Vincent? I'll get out of your way for this one.
What a fun comment. I mean, God, are these the decisions that are like actually going to make a meaningful difference during playoff time? I'm not sure, but I think Hayes has gotten a little bit, I don't want to use that word, it sounds rude, but like he's playing defense like I don't know, he looks a little bit smarter on defense. That's what I'm trying to say about Hayes. Like the rotations look a little bit crisper. He's not gambling as much, just because he's an incredible athlete and could probably block far more shots than he tries to. Like, but that comes with the risk of fouling and getting out of position. I like how he's looked recently defensively. I think you kind of just need somebody who's going to actually be a center defensively if you're sitting Anthony Davis, and that's not really Christian Wood, even though I like what Christian Wood brings offensively, but you can kind of mimic the shooting at other positions if you need to play lineups with Hayes. Plus, I think LeBron just likes having a vertical threat with him, and like D'Lo likes having a vertical threat too, and that's not Christian Wood. So I would prefer Jackson Hayes in those situations. As far as Dinwiddie and Vincent, like, I mean, ideally, like, you don't play either. This is where the max minutes are supposed to come from, by the way. This is that's what I would suggest, because I don't really think you need another ball handler when you have D'Lo, when you have Reeves, and when you have LeBron. But
especially in the playoffs,
right?
Like, LeBron is going to be on the ball so much more that I think you really don't need.
I'd rather just have somebody guy. like Max, who can capably shoot from the corner, who's a decent defender at his position, decent size too. He's a little bit bigger than Spencer Dinwiddie, so. I hate to answer an or question with neither. I don't expect Gabe to be in the rotation. I just think he's missed this much time. And it's not like Vanderbilt where he at least has experience with this coaching staff, with this roster.
Yeah.
Gabe has none of that, right? So you're coming into it essentially a fresh situation. And it'd be nice to have a pull-up shooter like he was during the playoffs last year, but his body of work in the regular season suggests he's not always that guy. So I mean, if I had to pick one of the two, I'd pick Dinwiddie, but I really would rather just Max be in that position.
Like, if you're asking yourself those questions, that I think is kind of indicative. Like, that's the bigger.
I mean, I guess a lot of teams have these like back of the end rotation questions. Like, the Clippers do you play Norman Powell or Amir Coffey more? Like I guess that's a slightly more. Like, this is like the Kroger brand version of that question for the Clippers, but like everybody has those questions,
Yeah. Fun little like aside, because you mentioned Kroger brand or whatever and store brand stuff. Do you know that like the number of people buying store brand stuff is legitimately impacting our economy?
What do you mean?
So like retail numbers are all down like 20 or 30% on the year, and a lot of it is like just like regular economics. People are going through a tougher time now, or whatever.
Yeah.
But then there was also a study that that people are buying store brand stuff because like the name brand stuff keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper in terms of like its quality. That people are like, well, shoot, I'm going to go ahead and buy store brand stuff instead because it's roughly the same and doesn't cost me as much. And on top of that, they're like bragging about it on social media. And these like name brands are like freaking out. It's like, oh crap. It's like, damn it, if it isn't the results of our decisions, like shit. we kept making it worse. And like now we have see-through baseball pants.
Oh my God. The pants. Just so stupid.
All right. I do though agree on both of those fronts. Like, I think Hayes gives you a more predictable skill set. He's going to try really hard in the playoffs too. You could tell him like, fuck it, go get in foul trouble. I don't care. Like foul whoever you want. Be dirty.
You're not going to play more than like 12 minutes anyway. Yeah.
Right. Like go and play on infinite turbo, run into whoever you want and create chaos over there. Wood doesn't have the motor to be able to do that. And then between Gabe and Dinwiddie, I know Dinwiddie is healthy and he's bigger. I like bigger guards in the postseason. Like, I have that in common with Phil Jackson. Give me, if I have the two exact same guards and one is just slightly bigger, or even if the bigger guard is like slightly less talented, give me the bigger guard over the smaller one in the postseason, especially good against some of these matchups. Dinwiddie has actually been better than advertised defensively. I think,
I agree.
He, it's taken him a while to get back to being a decent defender. And what that
like actually trying again after theoretically going on strike with the Brooklyn Nets.
But like, that's why he spent so much time in foul trouble when he first got to the Lakers, because he was like, all right, I got to like defend now. Okay. And like, he's just out of position and he's not used to flexing those muscles. I think he's getting back to doing some of those things. And he's actually been very good, especially given that he doesn't have to do basically anything on the ball. Like he's getting maybe 2 or 3 drives a game. And it's just like, just go be big and long and be smart on defense and ideally hit a couple open shots, but I don't necessarily think that's happening either. I think we should segue awkwardly from that, from Spencer Dinwiddie and Gabe Vincent talk to women's basketball, where I think I text you more often about the discourse of women's basketball than just about anything. Yeah. And I found the discourse about Caitlin Clark, again, doing just about anything maddening. Like in this case, you had Darren Rovell tweet that she just cost herself, what did he say,
$750,000. Yeah.
Somehow I think she's going to make that up. I
don't even know where he got that number from. Like it's oddly specific and yet not tied to anything.
Right. We'll talk about like the finances of it and stuff, but I think before we even get to like her actual decision, Bomani made a really interesting point, I thought, that was fairly widely panned, but I thought it was an interesting point. I'm really curious how you feel about it, where he was like, he didn't necessarily think that college basketball leveraged Caitlin Clark's popularity enough. The focus was so centralized on Caitlin Clark that there wasn't like enough focus on the teams that she was maybe playing or riding this wave to raise the tides of women's basketball. I think I personally would push back on it by saying like women's basketball grew like crazy. So it's kind of hard to argue that like they did anything that poorly here. But I also kind of see like a seed of what the point that he's trying to make there. Where do you stand on what, not just women's basketball, but basketball in general, how they have handled this phenomenon that has been Caitlin Clark?
What's interesting is she's such an enormous phenomenon right now that it kind of feels like she's like, if you're just jumping in right now, you assume that's how it's been for the last 4 years, when really it's only been this season. Like until they had the tournament run in 2023, when they got to the national title game, Iowa wasn't even selling out games, and this is her home arena. So yeah, like it's great. They sold out every home game prior to the season. Crowds there have been ridiculous. Like her effect on opposing crowds is probably my favorite thing. Like every arena that she's been in, other than those random Thanksgiving tournaments, has been sold out, and there's been attendance records in every arena, which is just bonkers. So it's not like there was this really long runway for the NCAA or college basketball to be leveraging her popularity, right? Like it just kind of came all at once. It's not like when she came in as a freshman, like everyone was expecting she was going to be the very next big thing. Like, Paige Beckers was National Player of the Year and she went to UConn, and like that's in its own sort of media industrial complex if you play at UConn. So I guess that's like my first element of pushback in that, yeah, maybe they could have been more proactive in realizing that this year was going to be like that for Caitlin. But I mean, they've had 6 different networks have had their highest rated college basketball game of all time with Iowa playing this year. And like, I mean, I don't understand what you're supposed to do. Like they're against different opponents, right? Like you watch Iowa play Nebraska because she might break the scoring record, and you see like some pretty cool players on Nebraska. Like there was a lot of talk about, Jazz Shelley and the other players who held Caitlin scoreless for 1 quarter and having to win a game against her. But I guess like because the phenomenon to me is relatively recent, like it is a 1-year thing, you kind of have to start with her, right? And you hope that she serves as an entry point for everyone else. But like, I do think that the right move is to saturate Caitlin as much as possible because she is the one confirmed draw, like she's the one who's bringing everyone in. So you get as much as you can through Caitlin and then hope that like that's what I guess permeates the rest of college basketball. I know there has been like some, oh my God, Caitlin's taking all of the oxygen. Like I'm watching a game on ESPN. She broke the record on Fox and they're still only talking about Caitlin on ESPN. But I think that's kind of the point. Like she is the leading scorer in all of college basketball history, right? Like there's a person who you can spend a lot of oxygen on, like there's a reason why she's getting all this attention. So I mean, I understand like wanting to leverage Caitlin as much as possible, but I do think that at a certain point, like she is the story, right? Like you want to spend as much time on her because who knows if we're ever going to see anybody like her again.
Yeah. I think the thing inherent to phenomena is the unpredictable nature, right? So how do you criticize an entity for not leveraging a phenomenon when nobody could have known that like it was going to be this incredible, right? Like even given the raised expectations for the kind of draw that she would be and what the sport might become while she's playing college basketball, it's just it's such a brand new thing, and this sport is growing so exponentially that I kind of think if you do too much to like stand in the way and try to build these off ramps off of this highway as it is growing as quickly and moving as quickly as it is, you risk kind of splintering the interest. Personally, I think it's just stand back, let this be as fun as it can be, and then we'll see how fun it can be at the next level as well. I also think like, God, I always blank on so she played LSU. Who's the girl who missed
Angel Reese.
time? Angel, she missed a bunch of time at the beginning of the year. She would have been like the natural, other focus that could have been at the beginning of the season. Maybe you want to focus a little bit more on South Carolina because they went undefeated again for the second straight year. And you can do that. But I just kind of think like while this wave is running as high as it possibly can, the last thing you want to do is build some kind of a dam or anything that can distract from breaking the rhythm of that big wave. Now the question now becomes like, will that wave continue on into the WNBA? Is the WNBA ready for that wave? What have you noticed that the NBA is starting to do? I saw the Indiana Fever listed their season ticket prices and tweeted that out as soon as Caitlin Clark made her announcement. What do you think? What have you seen the WNBA do to get ready for Caitlin Clark as she makes her way into it?
Well, I mean, the Indiana Fever have been preparing for this moment since last year. Like they were terrible in 2022. The WNBA has lottery odds that span back 2 seasons. So like they knew they'd have a huge leg up on the 2023 lottery, even if they were pretty decent in 2023.
Why are they the Indiana Fever?
I don't know. Their mascot is this guy named Freddie. His name is Freddie the Fever, and it's legitimately one of the most confusing things I've ever seen. I could not tell you why they're called the Fever.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I was it's such a weird random thing. Like on the other side of COVID, we're like, is that?
Yeah, and it's not like automotive related like you'd expect with the Pacers or
Yeah. I don't know.
And they don't even really have the same coloring as the Pacers too, which you would think from the same organization. But that's not really why we're here. So they knew like for a while that they'd have a good chance of getting the number 1 pick in this draft, and with it the right to select Caitlin Clark. Like her boyfriend works for the Indiana Pacers coaching staff. Like that's obviously been well established. They knew that they'd be able to capitalize on her Midwestern sort of appeal, right? Because Iowa and Indiana are not overwhelmingly far from one another. So you keep a lot of the same local endorsements. She already has that sort of middle of America, girl next door type of look, right? Yeah, totally. She's white. Yeah. I'm not saying that's entirely necessary for the Fever, because I think they did a really good job branding Aaliyah Boston this past year, who came from South Carolina, capitalizing a lot on that Gamecock fandom. But, Caitlin, for better or worse, is just a natural target for what an Indiana sports fan is probably looking for. And like, this is something they've been thinking about for a very long time. Like the fact that they put the season ticket release out immediately after she declared is not an accident,
amazing.
right?
That's perfect.
It's great. And the Indiana Fever are not the only team to have experienced a huge jump in season ticket sales once Clark declared. Like if you think about it, ticket prices in the WNBA are not exorbitant, right? Like you can get in the door for like $50 a seat, and like that's probably getting you very good seats. So if you're thinking like, okay, I can get 2 Caitlin Clark games for $1,000 and I can resell those and then just have like free WNBA tickets for a whole year, like that's already a good investment. I've heard other people say that their season tickets, just from being the teams that are going to play Caitlin Clark twice a year, have already gone up like multiple percentages since her announcement. A lot of the partners that the WNBA has are people that are already sponsoring Caitlin. Like WNBA has a deal with State Farm. They are literally the name sponsor of the WNBA draft. Nike is a WNBA sponsor who Caitlin has to deal with and will presumably have a shoe with very, very soon. So I just think all of like the right connections are being made. Like I know Caitlin just signed a deal with Gainbridge today, which the Gainbridge Fieldhouse is where she'll be playing her games as like, a home player for the Indiana Fever. So like, I think a lot of these things were already in motion before Caitlin made her decision. And the fact that NIL is, allowed for college players now, like she was able to make these partnerships even before she decided to go pro. So that's a big part of it. But like, we've seen spikes in WNBA TV ratings over the past couple of years. The raw numbers obviously pale in comparison to what college is doing, but I think that general growth is what they're hoping for. Like they're on ESPN a lot more. Their games are a lot more easily accessible than they have been in recent years. I don't know that they're like, it's like I watched the movie Air like several times over the past year, and I think about like what the NBA did with Michael Jordan and like what Nike did with Michael Jordan. And I think that, if the shoe's got to come out really soon, like I think that's a big part of it. Like I look at Sabreena Ionescu's exploding popularity, and the fact that like NBA players wear her shoe, I think is a huge part of why she resonates. Yeah. I think it's a huge part of why she resonates across like all segments of basketball fandom. And I think like Nike needs to get on that with Caitlin ASAP, because that's going to be a big part of just like getting her in like the gyms, with like all kids around the country. But like, I'm not like, marketing isn't my number one, area of expertise. So I'm not sure what the WNBA needs to do to leverage her popularity, but like, they waited to put out their national TV schedule until Caitlin declared. Like they're going to make sure Indiana is on TV as much as possible, like a very Victor Wembanyama type situation. I'm sure the WNBA will be like, they congratulated her for breaking Pete Maravich's record. The Indiana Fever had the tweet ready to go the minute she broke Pete Maravich's record. It's really quite good.
Congratulations, future boss. Like,
way
to go.
I think they know where like their bread is going to be buttered for the next couple of years. Like, so I would be surprised if like there wasn't a huge like blitz of Indiana Fever content coming through over the next year. And I think that's actually one of the more interesting stories, is just how the WNBA does this from an off-court perspective, because on the court, like I think that's going to take care of itself, you know? So I do think it'll be interesting to see like what they do with her just as a face of the league, because I think they've kind of struck out, in terms of like Asia Wilson, who two-time champ on the Las Vegas Aces, came into the league as a national champion out of South Carolina, two-time MVP. Like, just the list of accolades is ridiculous, and she's only 28 years old. And I don't think that like the average male basketball fan knows who A'ja Wilson is, and that's like criminal. So this is kind of just like sitting in their lap to make her like the next great women's basketball player. And I think it'll be an easier sell, honestly, but like they still have to do it.
The Fever, though, I believe still have some like they aren't going to be competitors or contenders right away, right? When she gets
it's hard to say. Like if Caitlin's this good, like it's not unheard of for rookies to be all-stars right away. Like that happens pretty regularly in the WNBA, and they already have an all-star, front court player in Aaliyah Boston. I mean, I expect them to make the playoffs this year. I expect them to probably win a round in the playoffs this year. So like it wouldn't be surprising to me if they won a title within the next 2 to 3 years, is what I'm
saying. That's the other part of this that I've noticed in watching from afar is women's basketball feels a lot like an indie band that is making it big. And a lot of the people who have been like involved with it growing and been invested in its growth for a long time now are kind of pushing back against kind of some of the newer fans. And I saw that, some people were pissed at, say, like Shams Charania for breaking some kind of news the other day. I think it was
he broke the signing of Breanna Stewart's contract.
Yeah. And I saw that like people were like, well, why is he breaking that news? Like he's broken NFL news too. Like I don't think NFL people are that upset about it either.
COVID.
Yeah. Also that. I guess that's bigger news than an NFL free agent. Yeah, I would say.
Had a lot of fires.
Yeah. But so how does a fan base that has been so supportive and is now bordering on combative with some of the people who are trying to get into it now, like what message would you have to those fans to like say, we can all enjoy this together? People enjoy things differently.
I think the gatekeeping more comes from the media, not so much the fan bases. I think the fans are excited, to have better atmospheres to watch games and to like get better teams and better players, and just the experience of being a fan in the WNBA is so
games
vastly
being easier
improved.
To watch on TV.
Exactly. And I think just as like a fan of the sport, it kind of like, I wish there was a better way to phrase this, but it kind of warms your heart just to see the players that you're watching get treated better. I've seen so many players say like, I signed here because I had a locker and a dedicated practice facility. And like, that seems obvious and yet has not been the case for so long in
charter
WNBA.
Like
so I think the fans are welcome, to bring more people in, like make the tent bigger. If people want to get on the Aaliyah Boston train, want to get on the Indiana Fever train, like all aboard. I think it's more so the media that's like felt a little bit more protective of the league in terms of all of the work that they've done to, keep the space open over the last decade or so. And then other people coming in just when like things get interesting, so to speak.
Yeah.
But like, that's where I have a problem. It's just, I think it's personally, I'm glad that more people are involved, right? Like if Shams tweets about Breanna Stewart, that's a good thing for everyone, right?
We're talking about this
his
now.
Reach is like, ridiculous.
We did
right?
not used to do this. Like we've had our conversations dating back to basically when you were running Silver Screen and you were still really interested in or even when you were just writing at Silver Screen and Roll. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, I want to talk to Sabreena about the Lakers, but then also I knew how passionate you were about this thing. And I like talking to people about the things that they are passionate about. That's how you get the best conversations.
Exactly.
That was years or so ago, but I would never like, I don't know, like personally, I remember when I was growing up, One Republic was like a tiny little band that I went and saw at college. And I know I'm dating myself. We saw them. I'm saw
not
them
that much younger than you. It's fine.
But Jen and I went and watched them. I convinced Jen to skip like her poli-sci class to go and we watched them at the Titan Underground back when Kelsey Fullerton still had their Titan Underground. And it was this old round table pizza that was basically the size of like a small library. And we watched them play there. And I was just, I had a great time. And I was like, all right, I'm going to throw myself into One Republic. And then like 6 months later, they're doing American Idol stuff. And I'm like, hold on. What? but it also made it so that like you could see like a clear improvement in production value on their songs and a clear improvement on the product itself. And it was cool just like to ride that wave as well. And I'm always more kind of wired towards let's let stuff grow. Like stuff growing is how you remain relevant. And I'm watching this and I've always been kind of more of an outside fan of women's basketball, but I get kind of more frustrated at like the blowback to any type of step in that direction of growing. It's like, no, you want this to grow. Like, please let this thing grow, because that's how those jobs get better. If you're covering the team, that's how their jobs and lives get better. It just seems so weird to me that we are still having this conversation here, given how much it's grown. Like, it's clearly working. Just like, let it work. Please let it work.
Yeah, and I think there's still some disconnect with like the league and players themselves, where they, actively like just ask for more coverage and then aren't necessarily willing to handle all of like the negative coverage that comes with that, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you hit on is so important. Like, I could probably count on one hand, not two hands, maybe like the number of people who have full-time jobs covering women's basketball in the country. And if you want more of those jobs to exist, like a lot of the people who are, a little protective or trying to gatekeep this industry, I'm sure they would love to have better jobs covering women's basketball, and those don't exist because the product hasn't, been considered a revenue source. And if it gets bigger, if it becomes, more part of the national conversation, then companies will want to cover it, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it just seems so obvious that you would want to bring in as many people as possible. And that means like some of the coverage is going to be silly and some of it's not going to be as informed, but I think all of it generally grows the pie, and that's the point, right? Like, we just want to make space for everyone because that makes everybody's lives a little bit better.
I am always going to be pro silly coverage. Always. Like, I'm
totally.
I like laughing on my show. I think people like laughing at their sports stuff, Yeah, I remember David, when I was at Locked On Lakers, pulled me and Harrison aside one time. He was like, "Hey, can you guys stop laughing? Can you guys try to be a little bit more serious?" And I was like, "No, I can't.
Yeah.
I think this is got I think sports should be fun."
During the 2020 title run, like Harrison and I had talked about like writing some like analysis thing for the like before the finals, and like I started writing it and I just like got on this like rabbit hole of like all of the threes Rondo had taken during the playoffs, and it just like became this no yes ranking of all of the threes Rondo was taking.
Yeah. And like that's the stuff that, by the way, resonates really well, because every fan knows that feeling. Every fan knows the Ron Artest shot that he made against Boston in Game 7. Not a single person in that arena, including Ron Artest, as he was going up, he's like, "What am I doing?" And then he made it. It was like, "Oh, thank God," And everybody can like relate, and those kinds of things resonate. The silly stuff is where the magic happens. Occasionally it leads to some stupid questions, and occasionally, there are certainly lines that shouldn't be crossed, right? Like we saw that guy really go at Caleb Williams for not throwing in the combine. I thought that guy looked like an idiot when he did that. But I think for the most part, like, open up the tent. Like, let's all have fun in this together. Sabreena, this has been a lot of fun, as it always is. Again, check out her work at The Athletic. Listen to her show, The Athletic Women's Basketball Show. March Madness, you guys are prepping for that. I am leaving for Vegas in like 2 weeks for March Madness. Cannot wait. And yeah, is there anything specific you want to plug before we get you out of here?
I mean, there's going to be stuff like every day about March related things. So just subscribe to The Athletic and probably do it under one of my articles so I get the credit.
Who should I bet on? Like, as soon as I get there, should I say like the South Carolina?
It's going to be South Carolina versus the field. I think you'll probably get good odds on like Notre Dame. That's sort of the sleeper that I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. All right. Again, that is Sabreena Merchant. She is of The Athletic. She is one of my favorite people in this industry. Please do check out her stuff. Follow her on Twitter at SabreenaJM with 2 E's. And yeah, that is going to do it for this episode of The Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin of Lakers Daily. Brad, that was smoother. And we have, let's see. So we have a game Wednesday. And then I have hopefully a fun guest lined up for Thursday. And if not Thursday, then probably Friday. Aaron will be here Thursday for The Lounge, and that will do it for the rest of this week. So until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Sabreena Merchant. This was The Lounge. Have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you whenever I talk to you.